Shwmai, croeso, hello and welcome to episode 76 of the Bluebirds Nest. A spotlight on Haverford County, the Cymru Leagues and Welsh football this week, as I'm absolutely delighted to welcome not one but two very special guests, familiar faces and voices from football fans across Wales, key figures from Sgorio on S4C and the hosts of the Sgorio podcast. A pleasure to welcome Sioned, Dafydd and Ifan Gwilym.
Sure,
Hello. Diolch, Ryan. Thanks for having us.
Diolch I chi am gytuno I cael sgwrs gyda ni. Dwi'n gwybod ti'n siarad yn Gymraeg ar y teledu a bob wythnos ar y pod Sgorio, ond rydyn ni ddim yn gallu siarad trwy'r rhaglen yn Saesneg heno. Dydw i ddim yn gallu siarad yn Gymraeg yn rhy hir. As much as I'd like to challenge myself, and I do take inspiration from your podcast. I use it as a way to polish my own Welsh. But yeah, we're going to stick with traditions with the Bluebirds Nest. We'll do this one in English if you don't mind. Great to have you both here. So much to talk about, especially with Phase 1 recently coming to a conclusion. We've had all the recent EFL and Merthyr speculation and drama, but tradition with the Nest, we sort of go down on a bit of a journey pathway. So, Sean, I'm going to come to you first. Where did the media career begin? I think I'm right in saying with the Swans?
Kind of, yeah. In terms of that was like my first proper job, had finished uni. There are fireworks going off on my road, so I'm really sorry. Literally just as we started recording, it's all kicking off outside. Who's having a fireworks display in January. Anyway, so Swans was kind of first proper media job, if you like. But technically, the first gig was with Sgorio, with Rondo Media, when I was in uni. I used to go in, I went to university in Bangor up in North Wales, and Sgorio, they've got an office in Caernarfon. And I would go in every Sunday, and I would make the teas and coffees for Dylan Ebenezer and co. And I would sit, one of my jobs was I'd have to go and get the newspapers to bring into the office because they had a Sunday show called Club at the time. And Sgorio, our exec producer, said to me a few weeks ago when I went up to present one of TNS's conference league games, he said, "Oh, I remember you being sat here and thinking, who's that quiet girl in the corner?" So yeah, technically, I've gone full circle and back to where it all started with Sgorio. So yeah, it basically went Sgorio, Swans, back to Sgorio.
Fantastic. And Ifan, I acknowledge your tall shirt at this point. You're a lover of good quality football clothing, I know.
I've let the tie down tonight. I'm so sorry.
You're not on brand, Sioned. You're not on brand.
The Pep Guardiola kind of jumper vibe.
Nice. We've spoken off camera. Obviously, I knew you'd visited Will and the team at Tor, and you've had a few purchases yourselves there. I've seen you wearing them on various occasions. We won't say where. I know you're a neutral, and you obviously support Welsh football in its entirety. But I want to come back to my first interaction with you was when you were interviewing Nicky Hyan outside Jelly Park, and all of a sudden you just reamed off a load of Belgian, and I think his native tongue. It took him by surprise. Trilingual, I'm going to call you. Where did that come from that day?
I deliberately surprised him. I didn't let on before I dropped it right at the end of the interview. And I said, in Dutch, do you mind if I ask you a question in Dutch? I'm glad I got the reaction I did. I could follow most of his answer, but I'm not, properly fluent. But I started learning Dutch because of my interest in Belgium and cycling specifically. So we had a good little chat with Nicky afterwards because he was asking me if I'd watched the Strade Bianche, which was on the same day. He's like, "Oh, will you watch that after going back?" And I was like, yeah. So he was obviously, because he's Belgian, he was obviously into cycling as well because everybody is there.
Yeah. And what about the media stuff? How long had you been doing it at that point then?
Well, I'm not as straight bat as Sioned in terms of like having a postgrad degree and going straight from uni into working for Sgorio. Until about 2 years ago, I was a country planner. So it's totally different, but I've started freelancing for Sgorio, commentating, like most of our commentators do actually. They've got other jobs.
Mm.
6 years ago this week. Then, 2 years ago, started full-time. Part of that was I'd done my own amateur podcast. And so a lot of it has been taking over the podcast with Sgorio. But I think they knew as well I was keen in sharing stories from domestic Welsh football. And that was I liked planning, but I love Welsh football.
Well, to be fair, you both do such an incredible job of bringing football to the masses in Wales. Yeah, even you're often on commentary for Cymru League's matches as well, like you said, as some of the other features that you do for Sgorio.
Yeah.
What does a typical week? It's probably every week different, but how, sort of what does it look like for you? How much prep work goes into getting ready for live matches then?
That's probably quite a small part of it, really. There's more in terms of prep for a commentary. There's a lot more for a live game because all of your 90 minutes is used.
Yeah.
For most of my games, I'm up to game 150 on Friday.
Oh,
so,
wow!
Most of those are highlights, and most of it's stuff that's never heard because it's just the 3-4 minutes of season highlights. So there's less work for that, especially like last weekend, Met v Penbont. I know the clubs very well by now.
Yeah.
Upcoming on Friday, I've got a Tier 2 game, which is a bit more work. Although I've seen Tre Thomas twice and Llanelli twice, one of which was beating Haverford in the cup.
We'll talk about
that. So there's a bit less work for that. There's more work for a live game, obviously. And a lot of that is thinking, rather than swatting up on players, it's about thinking, right, what am I going to be talking about? If I've got Markham with me, what are we going to be filling the time with? Because when the game's on, it's quite easy to commentate. It's the lulls in between that make me panic. And you get a lot of help in your ears from directors and producers and stuff. So, you don't feel alone.
Wow.
So it's quite good.
I've had my own taste of live commentary over probably the past 2 seasons. Obviously, we do our away day live commentary on the Bluebirds Nest live. So I know firsthand how much prep work goes into some of those things, the research, etc. I know the Bluebirds inside out, I suppose, but away team, the home team, the host teams, I tend to do a lot of research on. Sioned, I know you're a published author as well, which I've only found out, by the way. So congrats for that. But I think for you tend to focus more on the presenting and certainly the interviewing. A role that seems perhaps more initiative-led, I suppose. Do you get given specific topics or questions for interviewees? Or I'm assuming like Ifan said, is it a case of, cue Sioned and off you go?
That is true to some extent. I think people don't realise behind the scenes just how much of a team effort it is to make a live programme. It all starts with the producer. It's his sort of baby, if you like. So in terms of when we're discussing, usually on a Thursday or a Friday, if we're discussing themes or what we want to get out of the programme and everything, and then, we'll have a chat with the presenter, commentators and everything, just make sure everyone's on the same page as well. I guess the people watching just see me with a microphone, but the amount of work that's gone in from the running orders, any features we've done that week, any interviews with the pod and everything, like it all feeds into the live broadcast that we do on the weekend. So like I said, it's not as it just looks like me stood there with a microphone asking lots of questions. In terms of prep and stuff, prepping for pre-match interviews, piece of cake, because obviously you've got the entire week. You can rehearse, you know what you're going to ask, you pretty much know what they're going to say as well. Is post-match interviews that I just find so fun, because you never know what's going to come out of anyone's mouths. It's there's adrenaline, there's emotion, there's angry people, happy people. So it is a case of you've just literally got to roll with the punches and react to what they say. And I almost don't try and prep post-match interviews too much, because I think one of the tricky things to do, and it took me a while to learn this, and it sounds really obvious, but you have to listen to what the person is telling you. If you're in your head thinking, okay, I've got this next question I want to ask, but they drop a bombshell and you don't pick up on it or whatever. So I think post-match is just a lot more organic and fluid, and you've just got to see whatever chaos awaits you, really.
Yeah, there's certainly chaos in the Cymru League. So to be fair, the whole team of you who do that role, you do it really well, and it's always a part I look forward to, I suppose. At the end of a game when there's been a certain talking point, or you just think, right, the fireworks are going to go off here, and it's part of the drama, I suppose. Two parts to my next question. You've both had hundreds of probably really special highlights from your time at Sgorio. Covered some fantastic games over the years, no doubt. Sean, I'll come to you first on this one. Do you have a favourite Haverfordwest moment that you've seen or been a part of? And then on a broader scale, what's your standout moments, whether it's Cymru League or even on your international coverage as well?
Okay, so I'll start with the Haverfordwest one. The obviously, the last European campaign, I think those games at the Cardiff City Stadium, just loved them, absolutely loved them. Like, what a journey. And I know Ivan's probably going to talk a bit more about them in a moment. From like a personal Haverfordwest story, though, and I don't really know if this is going to count, before I'd started officially with Sgorio, this was years ago, it was just before COVID, a couple of months before the pandemic hit, and one of the producers asked me if I would go and shadow one of the commentators at a game. And I hadn't worked for quite a while because I was technically freelance at the time, really struggling for work, like nearly quit everything and just like nearly went to get another job. And I was like, right, okay, big day today. I'm going to go and shadow one of the Sgorio guys. It was, you guys were playing Penabont. So I was like, right, big day. So I was living in Swansea at the time, drove all the way, and I get to the car park and there's nobody there.
Oh, no.
I'm thinking, oh, right, okay. I mean, I know lack of crowds is a bit of a running joke, but seriously, where are the people? And then I look down at my phone, I look at the fixture list, and the game was at Penabont, not Haverfordwest. And I was mortified, and I wasn't going to get there in time because it was literally like half an hour to go until kickoff. So long story short, I did not get to the Penabont Haverfordwest game. So, and my first kind of day with Sgorio was a bit of a disaster. So now I have a running fear of turning up to a game and I've driven to the wrong ground. So but I'm still here, so all good.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed. We'll come on to it shortly, but fingers crossed you know where it is this weekend, I'm sure. What about why are you doing? You've done quite a lot of international men's and women's then. Any standout moments there?
I mean, the Qatar World Cup is just all like, I'm not even joking when I say I think about it on a daily basis. If my career finished tomorrow, the fact that I've covered Wales at a World Cup is honestly, it just puts the biggest smile on my face. And I didn't, I was 25, 26 out there, I never thought I'd be still, young, early in my career, and covering a World Cup. So that is definitely up there. And even the Ukraine game, you just asked me about post-match interviews. It's like there were no notes, nothing. You're just going off pure emotion, pure just drama and elation. And so just the entire World Cup experience was, even though obviously the football wasn't great. Yeah. It was terrible. But just being out there, I was really lucky. I got to go to the final as well, which was just like the best night of my life. And then most recently, seeing the women qualify for the Euros, being out in Dublin, being at the Aviva, which was just electric. It was I'm so glad we were there because we'd been doing the highlights from all the away games from the studio, and I thought, it's still an honour to present them, but you kind of want to be at the studio. You don't want to be in a little studio. So being out in Dublin and seeing them qualify. Got a big hug from Jess Fishlock at the end as well, which was amazing, and just seeing the players with their friends and families on the pitch. Amazing.
Fab. We'll come on to the women's game in more depth shortly. fingers crossed that's not the last World Cup you go to. Perhaps an America or Canada or Mexico or something like that now in 18 months or so, fingers as well. Ifan, same question to you, mate. The Haverfordwest encounters that you've been to, there's been a few, but I'd imagine it's going to be, like Sean had said, one at the City Stadium.
It's got to be up there. I'll mention 3 post-match interviews with 3 different managers, one of which you mentioned already, the Nicky Hyan one, where I surprised him with my terrible Flemish.
Yeah.
The one I had with Wolvesy, when pizza in hand and a picture went spread quite widely of me. I'm not sure if it was like unprofessionally eating a pizza while interviewing. But yeah, the European games at Cardiff City Stadium. So I did the post matches for both games at Cardiff City Stadium, and yeah, the one against Scandia was obviously great, but actually I much preferred it was because it was such an emotional end to the Torshavn game, and obviously it was disappointment was a massive part of it, but you could really sense the pride.
Yeah,
it was a really special night, even though there was a loss on in terms of the 2 legs. Just interviewing Tony and Ben Fawcett together at the end, I thought it was a really nice moment, and that'll stick up there with me.
Yeah, I remember it fondly. I was in your shot, and you said, Tony, because you'd interviewed him pre-match, and he said, I'll take penalties if it comes to it. You know, if it means we're going to get there, we'll do it all again. Would have been probably a record-breaking amount of consecutive penalty wins. And you said to him, Tony, no penalty drama. And he was like, well, yes, it was, because it was never a penalty.
Yeah.
I was because obviously I was capturing it.
His hands are there, eh?
Right, I still have sleepless nights over it. Obviously, that was the conclusion of the documentary that we'd done for 2.5 seasons. And it was, really emotive, I suppose, the way it concluded. And somebody messaged me that night saying, you're out, but you won. And I was like, oh, that was like, it captured everything about how we'd, had such a bandwagon almost, and momentum was with us. And people from all over Wales were messaging our opposition saying you've cheated your way to victory. Just the whole drama behind it. So yeah, I'm unsurprised you've said that, because that's quite an iconic interview as well. What about the wide job role then? What other ones stand out for you?
I don't think I've got a massive one. I think I'm just possibly because it took me later in life to get to it. I still kind of pinch myself that I'm doing it really. I'd consider it a dream job, and it wasn't something I'd particularly pursued hard. But I'm really glad that I get to. What I like is getting to know the clubs, because I grew up following Aberystwyth, and I still wish them the best. But it's hard to have a favourite team when you're working in the league, mainly because you get to know everybody, and everybody's fantastic. Basically, you really like the people you meet, and that's Cymru Prem, but also lower league as well. I really love the items we do, the grassroots, we call them, the grassroots items. Just always a pleasure meeting new clubs, meeting new people.
Yeah, I got to admit, I'm really envious of the roles you do, on the national scale you do. I love my my gig at Haverfordwest County. And like yourself, I didn't think I'd ever end up doing this. I'm a teacher of old. I now teach.
Really?
But I was once upon a time.
I didn't know that.
I teach teachers now is my full-time role. But and this is a hobby, but it's it's a passionate hobby of mine. And like you say, getting to know people from other clubs and the whole circuit, I suppose it's fascinating to see how different clubs do things differently. I want to go back to the commentary side of it here, and I've got to mention Nicky John here. One of my favourite memories of seeing Sgorio presenters and interviewers, etc. Now, I've had interactions with away fans being close to me doing commentary and perhaps turning some colourful abuse and language my way. But Nicky John's interview with Corey Shepherd after the playoff final, where he let slip, shall we say, with that infamous interview. Sean, I remember seeing you in Slovakia when Wales played away last summer, I think it was, in that train. You were tussling with an umbrella over by the Cork flag, and I felt for you, Any other funny moments that have sort of caught you off guard, or does Nicky's take the biscuit?
I mean, touch wood, I haven't quite had a Nicky John Corey interview incident. God, any funny moment? I mean, it's always like chaotic, and this is why me, Ifan, like this is why we love it. There's never a dull moment. I guess the most recent one would have been the Connors Key Bala game that we did. So it was on the final day before the split, which they'd already had to move because of the issues with Maes Tegid and their frozen pitch up there. And we're about half an hour away from kickoff. The fog was so thick, Ryan, you could not see the other side of the pitch. And we're all stood there going, this game's not going to, it's not going to happen. It's not going to go ahead. Bizarrely, they postponed kickoff by 15 minutes. The game started. It never should have started, in my opinion. If it wasn't the final game of the split, that game would never have happened. And then anyway, they kept on stopping the game, restarting, blah, blah, blah. We're still on air at this point, but we've just got to fill. And then you've got Ebsy doing an amazing job presenting. He's just talking away. They're coming to me. I basically turned into a weather woman. I'm just fog, and so it's just, there's always just bizarre things that you never even sort of think will come up. So it's always expect the unexpected. And I think, you know, when you were asking us before about prep and stuff, you've always got to prepare for absolutely anything. I didn't prepare to learn about how being near the water means that you get thicker fog and everything, but you know, we
it's Sean Lloyd jive, but you was yeah, I like that one. What about you, mate? Anything happened?
No, I think what Sean just said there, you need to be ready to pivot all the time and be ready for the unexpected. I think the most manic I've been is the actual playoff final last year. So at Carnarvon versus Penabont, and the electricity in our trucks just 2 hours before kickoff went down. And came back up, and it went back down again. So about an hour and a half before kickoff, an hour and a half before kickoff, we made the call to abandon the trucks and go get secondary trucks from Carnarvon, from our office there. So thankfully we did have one short drive. So honestly, you know, people will see the fact that we came on there slightly late. But what they didn't see was, you know, a minute before we went on air, it was still carnage. You know, we had this desk that was trying to be put into our truck because we were in a little back of a transit by then, and then it was just not fitting in. So they tried to take the desk back out, and all the plugs in the back of our console just went. And there's like 40 seconds left, and trying to put things in frantically, and just being ready for carnage and making it seem as if it's not carnage, because when that show started, you could tell at home that we were absolutely panicking seconds before.
And bearing in mind as well, it's one of the biggest games of the season, of course, the playoff final, and there's a hilarious picture of me one of the FAW photographers took, because when it all kicked off, that's usually around the time that I do my pre-match interviews, and they just decided, right, no pre-match interviews because we can't do anything. So I could sense the chaos, and then I was like, right, do you know what? I don't think I'm going to be very helpful in this situation, so I'm just going to go and sit in the dugout. And there's a picture of me sat with a coffee with my sunglasses on, looking really glamorous, when Ifan and everyone else were just basically fighting to get this program.
I had hair before the game.
And I remember Rhys Griffiths coming up to me and going, are we doing a pre-match interview? I was just sat there, I was like, no, because for the moment we haven't got electricity, we haven't got a program. And he was just like, oh right, okay. But off he went. So expect the unexpected always.
Yeah, 100%. Who would work in live broadcasting, huh?
Well, that's why Ifan doesn't have hair and I need both.
We mentioned the women's game there and the growth of that. Let's talk about that. We're really in Haverford County really passionate about seeing this, and I think Sgorio's played such a big role in raising the profile. I had Mikey Loveridge, who's our women's and girls lead. He was on the Nest last week with me, and I said I held my hands up. Other than coaching a couple of girls in an academy role years and years ago with the Swans myself, I'd never really watched women's football up until, yes, the Lionesses have done really well and got to finals and things, and I've probably tuned in a bit on those, but particularly over the last few years with Sgorio sort of covering Gennaro Adran Premier games and the Cup games, and obviously now the women's national team doing so well, great to see the record-breaking attendances and things like that. With that tournament on the horizon now this summer, do you think the coverage has impacted? Sioned, you've been at a lot of the games.
Yeah, 100%. It's been a struggle and it's been hard at times, getting people to buy in, even with the national team, let alone the domestic league. And don't get me wrong, there's still a hell of a lot of work to do. I don't think it's a case of being like, woohoo, we qualified, job done. This is just there's a massive, massive mountain to climb, and we're just at the beginning. When you compare us with countries like England, of course, over the border, Germany, the States, obviously, with women's football, we are nowhere near the levels that those countries are. Maybe we'll never get to those levels. Who knows? But I mean, from, my perspective, my God, I had a small stint playing for Pontardawe women when I was like 7, and that was the beginning and end of my very short football career. But I remember going to watch Wales women play. It might have even been it was somewhere, Leckwith maybe, I can't remember. Again, when I was like 9 or 10 years old, and you could count how many people were in the crowd. So the fact that we've gone from that to this, obviously a lot of the focus now will be on the national teams, but I think a lot of credit has to go to the work that's gone into the Adran Prem and all the new structure and the branding and, everything that's gone on over the past couple of years with that. Again, there's still a lot more work to do. I think, when you look at the standard of football, sometimes, personally, I think, there's a lot more work to do to get it up to scratch and to get it to what it needs to be. But the work rate and all the hard work that's going into it from everyone, especially at the clubs, especially the volunteers and players, who work so hard to make that league what it is. And hopefully with the national team doing so well, hopefully after the Euros this summer, that growth on a domestic level will keep improving, and that players want to play as well, and that young girls want to play. I think that's massive, and hopefully that's what we see over the next few years.
Definitely, and since we've had the artificial pitch in now, turned up on Saturday for our fixture against Bala, and there was girls' games going on. I think Aberystwyth, we were hosting a couple of teams, and it's just great to see that we're on a real trajectory with it. And we're always putting out bold statements and saying this is our vision, this is what we want to strive to achieve, and get into the top league with a ladies team is certainly something that's on the vision going forward. And you look down the road to like Ferry Llansamble, to be fair, they've been on a similar sort of pathway over the last few years, and I didn't realise they narrowly missed out in the Cup semi-final. I saw highlights of it and assumed they'd won, but I think TNS came back and pinched the spot in the final. But still, a great success story there. Ifan, is it passport ready for a Swiss visit this summer, Euro 2025 for you?
I don't have a passport, but I do have tickets. I do have tickets for the game.
Okay.
So my next plan is working out how I get flights and hotels. I've looked and they're very expensive, and I need to sort out my passport for different reasons. Nobody in the house has, and we need to go on holiday this summer. That's one thing I have done, is sorted out the tickets for the game.
The important bit.
Yeah.
So I'll make it somehow.
I didn't even realise. let's go back to JD Cymru Premier and Phase 2 underway. We took 3 points last Saturday. A big win for us against home to Bala. We've taken 7 points off them this season, and traditionally, you know, they're such a tough outfit, experienced campaigners. So we've started off pretty well. I know both of you have had involvement in TNS over the last few months. We've all been behind them on their adventures. They did so well, to be fair. Sioned, you particularly over in Fiorentina, that's an unbelievable trip. But they seem to be back to their best in the league. Obviously, we are hosted by Penabont, who've really, you know, well, they've led the way for large spells this season, I suppose. Really competitive at the top and at the bottom as well. You don't know who's going to end up in that bottom two. What have you both made of the league this season then?
Well, I'll go before Sioned mentions it, but in terms of bottom two, I think Aberystwyth are down. It's going to be strange.
Yeah,
you're looking at the two ever presents being the two that go down, which will be strange, I think. You know, I think 12's a difficult number to allow the traditional clubs and new clubs coming through, because it's great to see new clubs getting promoted and doing well. You know, it's a shame that someone like Colwyn Bay last year comes up, great for crowds, and 12's really competitive to stay up. To be in the top 10 to stay up for the next year. So yeah, but you know, we'll see what happens when we go back up to 16, if that's better. But yeah, no, it's been a great competitive season. It's been different seeing, you know, your Ballas and Connors Keys struggle to get in the top 6. It's been great to see your Penabonts and Haverfordwests going up, you know, fighting for. Well, for a long time, it was without TNS points, you know, fighting at the top. But it's always felt inevitable that TNS would come, unfortunately. In terms of how competitive the league is, you know, they have by far been the strongest team for the last few years.
Yeah. John Adobe, what have you thought about it all?
Well, apart from the weather and all the games being postponed recently, which has been a bit of a pain for us, well, for everyone. It's been fun. I think this has probably been one of the most entertaining seasons we've had for a long time, in terms of, like Ifan said, the names that you expect to be at certain places in the league haven't been and whatnot. I think the whole story with TNS, and obviously, you know, like you said, a brilliant campaign for them, but seeing the effect that it had on them in the league, I think that's been really interesting. And I think that's just cemented, you know, obviously there are, in terms of the plans the FAW have of wanting more Welsh teams competing in Europe, I think it's been a really interesting blueprint to see how it actually affects them on a domestic level. But like we knew, normality was always going to resume at some point. Clubs from, I mean, obviously we're a bit biased, but the clubs from the south, like we said, Penabont, Haverfordwest, Met looking really strong this season. My car mileage, loves that. Not as many trips up and down the A470 at the moment. But yeah, just like I said, the stories, twists and turns. I've got to say, Britain Ferry, I love having them in the league. I think they're such a great club. You know, obviously it's definitely not out of the woods yet. But like we mentioned earlier about getting to know people at the clubs, and the people are such a massive part of the jobs that me and Ifan do. And, you know, even today, getting in touch with Britain Ferry for a bit of a random interview request, which I won't go into, and they're just like so happy to help us. Anything you need, let us know. And all of the clubs are the same. You know, I'm sure managers and certain staff are probably fed up of me texting them, asking, can we do this? Hello, me again. So yeah, the people in the league, in the leagues, just make our jobs very, very easy most of the time.
You're only going to Britain Ferry for the chips and curry sauce, I've heard.
Well, this might be what my request is.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. All right.
Stay tuned.
I looking ahead at, you know, phase 2 and thing. I keep telling people to strap in and get ready for a bumpy finish, because we've been on a real success story. You know, the clean sheets record, highest number of points. There's so many things we've smashed this year. To be fair, Tony and Waggy and the boys have really brought their A game across it. But we know how hard it's going to be, so to start with 3 points last Saturday, it's an excellent start. But yeah, Pen y Bont to come, and we'll come on to that. But looking even further ahead, you mentioned the 12 teams currently. It's heading for 16 teams the season after next, 26-27. I've actually written a guest blog for topbins.co.uk. It's only came out earlier this week. It's a little plug there, but take a look at it if you're a fan of the Cymru Leagues. I've been really impressed with some of the articles in there. So I'm really sort of au fait with it at the moment. I wrote a guest article on the new format that's been proposed, a 3-way split, and even more jeopardy. I love how much jeopardy is involved in it. It's really intriguing. Do you think it's going to deliver a better product in the league?
I'm a big fan of moving to 16, but I think we need to be careful about our expectations about what's going to change, because I think it's a key part of it. I think it's a key part of the jigsaw, but it's not going to lead to better attendances on itself. I think we do a disservice to clubs like Haverfordwest, Pen y Bont, Caernarfon, who grow their attendances, if we think that just switching to 16 is going to help that. The work done in the community is what drives attendances up. 16 is not going to make much difference in terms of that. In terms of standard on the pitch, I don't think it's going to make a difference in terms of that. It needs to be, with investment as well, if you want to drive the standard. But yeah, I think 16 team for me is the perfect size for the Cymru Prem. But I think that's just one thing, and on a lot of things that need to be added up to make the league what we know it can be.
Yeah, you say investment. There's 6 million floating around now, I think, isn't there?
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, well, exactly. Hopefully,
I couldn't help myself.
Well, on that, 4 million of that was for Pen Park, and if you split that 4 million across teams in the Cymru Prem so that they can play European games at home, I think that's a better use of investment for, let's say, Haverfordwest, that you can play Sgendia at Bridge Meadow rather than playing one extra club from South Wales twice a year.
I can only dream if it was to be a Sgendia at home, they'd have a warm welcome. I'm not so sure about people. I think they'd be lynched at the gates. Charlotte, what do you think of the new format?
No, I'm with Ifan. Big fan of the 16. I think in terms of where the league is at, the clubs we have, exactly like Ifan said, 16 does seem like the perfect number. And I don't want to repeat what Ifan said, but it is just the number of teams is a very small piece in a very complicated jigsaw at the moment. It's going to be a really interesting few years, and change can be scary and a bit daunting, and I think you're going to get a lot of unhappy people. You're going to get a lot of happy people as well. I'm intrigued to see where it goes, but I think, again, like Ifan said, it's changing to 16 teams isn't going to change things instantly overnight. There are so many pieces of the puzzle that need to go right. It's been, like we said, we've just mentioned, obviously, the 6 million with Merthyr there, obviously the story that's broken that the FA have rejected the EFL clubs, their bid to compete in the League Cup in Wales as well. So it feels like there's been a lot of stuff happening over the last few months, and it feels like we're on the brink of some quite big and significant changes. But I don't think we want to lose the soul of the league. And, you mentioned the volunteers and the people that work so hard. I think, so many clubs have some amazing plans. Obviously, Haverfordwest, that club is, your club has changed over the past few years. Again, to stay on theme, Pen y Bont, some of the plans that they have sound so exciting in terms of with the ground and everything. But you don't want to lose the essence of where you came from. And hopefully with whatever changes happen in the league, that stays intact.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. And I think you mentioned the community and the volunteers. They're they're the life and soul of the place, I suppose. It's the off-field stuff. And the move to Friday night football for me is the biggest question mark. I love my South Wales Friday nights are fantastic, and we had to go up to Bala on a Friday night because it was within now this 125-mile radius that you're eligible to play. But I mean, and to be fair, the supporters travel far and wide, and they were a fair few up at, I'm going to call it Ice Tegged from now on. Nice, but, it's a big commitment, and even some of the players, and like I said, I've got a full-time role as well as this. Getting to Carnarvon for a 7:45 kickoff on a Friday, or probably I think it's Connors Quay or the Flint fixture would be our furthest sort of northeasterly, and a Carnarvon going to get down to Kincoid and Barry, etc. That's the biggest question mark for me, and it's great to have aspiration to have that going forward in the future, but short term, I think that's going to be a real challenge. But long term,
you asked me earlier about what a normal working week looks like. Today, I compared the average attendances across everybody on Friday versus other games.
Okay.
And
which, by the way, you can tell Ifan used to work in planning because this man's Excel spreadsheet poured into me.
Okay. I've got my spreadsheet open now. But there's very little difference really. You were talking across all the games. The average on the Friday night games is 25 higher than for all the other games. A lot of the clubs, including yourself, and obviously New Year's Day skews that.
Yeah.
But your attendances have been higher on non-Fridays. Britain Ferry, over 100 higher on non-Fridays. Penabont are the only ones really. They've been playing on Fridays, and it's really benefited them. 400 extra they get on a Friday.
I think in a normal season, I think the margins would be different for our Friday nights to our Saturdays because we've been playing in Carmarthen. To be fair, the attendances they were by the end going a little bit less and less each week. But fair play, the supporters were so supportive and they were faithful and travelled. It's 40 minutes ground to ground, so for them to come up Saturdays or Fridays have been really good. It's the Pembrokeshire League, I don't know whether you know, at the grassroots level, and they're so strong, they're fiercely competitive across, I think it's 5 or 6 divisions. It makes such an impact. If we play on a Friday night, a number of those players and committee and supporters of those clubs tend to come along and watch us, and greatly appreciate that. But then on a Saturday, obviously they've got commitments themselves. So I think going forward, we'll see a big difference with those Friday night games. And yeah, that league table of average attendances, New Year's Day and the 4th of January when we played Ferry, we had 500 again there. I think it was 500 plus on Saturday again. So already since being back at home, our average is much higher than it probably was. Well, certainly years ago, there was a big crowd for us was 300 years ago. So seeing the community work and everything, the whole, the team effort that the club are doing, paying dividend now, and people are coming through the turnstiles. It will hopefully stand us in good stead. And it's the same across the league. You see other clubs doing similar initiatives, and everybody's trying to think outside the box and doing it. And hopefully, it's an upward curve. Mentioned Penabont, Sean. You said hopefully your sat nav's going to be working this weekend, and you get to the right ground. Can I ask you?
I've jinxed myself now.
I won't ask for a prediction, but how do you think it's going to go?
I think it's going to be feisty. I know Penabont will have been so disappointed that they lost to Met. Because like you said, obviously you got your win against Bal. I think starting phase 2 with a win, just psychologically, I think is massive. Obviously there was a kind of controversial red card at that Met game, so I think they'll definitely not to sound too cliche, but they'll want to bounce back, get the win. Obviously their first home game of phase 2 as well, and the fact that I think they're going to be looking over their shoulder now. They've been at the top of the league for so long because obviously TNS is other European commitments. Will we see a title race? I mean, I hope we do. My heart says we will. My head says probably not. So I think it will be a case where Penabont start looking over their shoulders a bit more, and that's where you guys are currently at.
Fingers crossed, fingers crossed. Ivan, are you at the SDM Glass Stadium on the weekend?
Yeah, I'll try and come as a supporter. Not working, obviously, but it's interesting. Shauna mentioned the red card controversial, and I'm guessing that for Haverfordwest, you'll be thinking more about the controversial disallowed goal last time you were at Penabont. So there's always something in this league. Always scores to settle, and I'm thinking there's one to settle for you on Saturday. So it'll be interesting to see how that factors into everything, because I know everybody will downplay that beforehand, but there must be something in the back of the mind.
You're lighting the torch, paper, you are.
Oh, I like it.
Ivan loves to stir.
I am known for that.
There was a very marginal offside call late on in the game, which would have been an equaliser as well. But we're not bitter at all. We move on. It is what it is. It's it was a really tight encounter that night. It always is. We had a 0-0 at the start of the season at LHP Stadium in Carmarthen, where we were the host, and they're always tight. And it's a credit to both clubs that they go in toe to toe with each other. Obviously, I know which side I would rather come out on the weekend, but there's still going to be 8 games after it, so it's not must win for either team at all. But getting points at Penabont, it hasn't been done by many. Obviously Britain Ferry had a great. I think they were the first to get any points probably early in the season, and Met seemed to be a bit of a bogey team for them. So fingers crossed we can join that club. Listen, I've taken up enough of your time. Thank you so much for this. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you, obviously, to yourselves. What you do on the weekends is great, but also, as you said, Sean, it's a team effort. So thanks to all at Sgorio for everything you do. I've got to say, Owain Jones absolutely loves it when the Sgorio live cameras come to film our game. So fingers crossed he can get on the score sheet again this weekend. I think it's either 3 or 4 live games you've been at now, where since he's joined, and he's got back to the net. So I'm going 1-0 Haverfordwest, Owain Jones. That's my prediction. My neck on the line. Fingers crossed it doesn't come back to bite me. Again, thank you both. Really enjoyed this. See you at Penabont on the weekend.
I'll make sure my sat nav's turned on.
Cheers, both.